Welcome to the Meat and Potatoes podcast. Today we are joined by Annie Jorgensen and Laura Walker, who are the co-founders at Home Articulation. How are you guys?
Good. Doing great.
Thank you for joining. Sisters, which is kind of turning into a recurring theme here. There's more and more co-founders that are family, which is cool. We'll get into that. And Annie, you're the CEO, and Laura, you're the COO, correct?
Yep,
Correct.
Correct.
All right. This is a cool one because it benefits kids, and ultimately makes their lives better. And there is a business involved with this. So let's jump into the founding story. Where did the idea come from? What problem are y'all attempting to solve?
Great. So Laura and I are speech language pathologists. And we both took a little bit different of a track. There's a lot of different ways that you can, a lot of things that you can work on with speech pathology. So I worked in hospitals with adults, actually, and I've had brain injury, neurological disorders, and Laura worked in the schools with kids. And while I was working in the hospital, I was working with patients that had had a stroke and had aphasia. And there were these really awesome apps that I found where they could work with me in the office, but then I could send them home and the therapy that they were doing with me would continue at home. And the patients that I was working with that were actually using those apps and practicing at home, there was a marked difference in the progress that they were making. And at the same time, one night I went home after work and I have a daughter who's an extremely picky eater. And I mean, she's kind of like next level picky eating. Like, let's see if she'll eat anything. Okay. And I was feeling pretty stressed about it as a parent, as a mom, and just did a Google search. And I found a dietitian who had created this picky eater protocol. And within minutes, I had this material that helped me feel really empowered as a parent to know what to do at home. And those two worlds kind of collided in my mind. In that moment, I could see, oh my goodness, I have the skill set here, the knowledge to really empower parents. And I called Laura at about 10 o'clock that night with, I have an idea. That's how I don't even know if I said hello to her. And just launched into this idea. And within about 30 minutes, the birth of At Home Articulation had been articulated, and we were really excited about it.
Very cool. What did you think of the idea?
Well, at first I thought she was crazy. But the more we started talking about it, I was like, you know what, you're right. There's such a gap right now in material like this for parents, and we have the know-how, and we can do this. So I got really excited about it too.
Very cool.
I mean, maybe if I had known what we were getting ourselves into, I would be less excited.
Yeah.
Right? Naivety, right? But anyways, it's been a long road and a really cool one, and nothing like we thought it would be.
Right.
Yeah. So if you had a time machine, if you're in the time machine business, you wouldn't use it to go back and say no. You'd still go forward.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, that's always a good sign.
Yeah.
Because there's some where they'd be like, no, it wasn't worth it. Okay, so in my mind, I'm picturing, what'd you do at school today? Did some science, did some math. What did your teachers say? Like, how are you doing? I'm good. All good. 2 thumbs up. All systems go. And then you talk to the teachers, and they're like, did you help them with their homework? And you're like, well, she said she didn't have any, right? I'm talking worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But the communication oftentimes is tricky, whether they have speech issues or math issues. And so it's probably the main reason they invented homework in the beginning. It was like, you got to polish it for half an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is in the afternoon or evening. So you guys in your respective worlds see the issues and the problems, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but if you practice a little bit more and you kind of build on what you were working on with the experts, you're probably going to get to your goal and achievements a little bit quicker. And is it correct in assuming it's kind of gamified? Because it's easier and funner to play games than go down a checklist.
Absolutely. So if you think of speech like a movement, right? So let's say you were trying to learn to play the piano. You get a 30-minute lesson with a teacher, right? But if you
therapy, and this is how we need to practice,
Yeah.
you know? So the system itself is not necessarily one that's setting them up for success.
Yeah.
Right. So, like you said, we've developed games. We make it really fun. And the whole idea is that this is something that can be accessed on a computer, a phone, a tablet, and it's 5 minutes or less, and it's a fun game. So the kid actually wants to play it. And if you have a kid who's consistently practicing 5 minutes a day, research shows that child is going to move more quickly through the speech therapy process.
Yeah. Which I think would ultimately enable like better learning, maybe less like being made fun of theoretically,
Oh, sure.
which means like greater happiness, which might mean they want to do it for 10 or even 15 minutes, which would be cool. And the speech specialists and connecting them all could be solved with technology.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yep.
got it.
How does that work?
So we are bridging the gap between home and the speech therapy room. So our product is front facing to both the speech therapist who can use it as a fun therapy tool. A lot of our clinicians do in therapy. But then we created features for that clinician to send homework in less than 5 seconds. They can finish a session with their student. They can say, we worked on this sound in this position of the word at this level of complexity. Click, 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 send. And that's all they do. And that sends an email to the parents describing what was done. That speech therapy happened, because what you were describing earlier about homework with teachers, it's even more disconnected for speech therapists. They get one meeting generally a year with those parents to give them an update about what's happened in speech, with maybe some progress in between. So now we're notifying parents that speech happened and giving them the tools that they need to immediately practice and to do it in a fun way with their child.
Yeah.
And the way that we're empowering those parents is we have built-in instructional videos and tips and tricks showing them how to do that. So within a couple of minutes, they can have that same experience Annie did and feel empowered, like, oh, I can do this. We show them what to do if the kid says it wrong. We show them how to make the sound in their own mouth. And so they can just pick it up and move whatever level or sound that child's working on. They can be empowered to help their child at home.
Yeah. Theoretically, again, I'm throwing out all these theoreticals, but it could be like on the car drive from school to ballet.
Absolutely.
Later that evening.
That's exactly.
That I've interacted with that the end user I don't think is the kid paying, possibly not the parent, but it might be the school districts. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. The interesting part of our business model is that we came at this from a very B2C approach. Based on my experience, right, of sitting in my living room and purchasing this product, as well as being a clinician that purchased for my patients who had aphasia, but we went to a conference last November called it's ASHA, the American Speech Language Hearing Association. So all of the speech therapists converge, for this few-day conference. And we were astounded by how many speech therapists were asking us for group made a hard pivot at that point, and we built out some tech. We did we have some beta groups that were with us from the beginning, and we did a lot of testing with, and we built out the back end for B2B. So that just launched in May.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the price tag for like big school districts is a lot different than, there's 5 parents in this zip code and 5 parents in this zip code. Now I want to get into and we'll keep talking about the business model, but the division of duties between 2 co-founders and sisters. So I assume you need like a library that's not like a week of content and usefulness. You got to figure out the pricing strategies. You got to have a website and some marketing and all of that. How did y'all come to these problems of like, who's going to do what, when, and how?
I think that's a really cool thing is as we jumped into this and as the different phases of the business would unfold, I think Annie and I are really, we're a great team. And there was some things that I was more naturally suited towards and things that Annie was more naturally suited towards. And so, as a new role would come up, we have our spreadsheet out with all the different roles and who's wearing those hats. And it would just be discussion. Okay, who's running QuickBooks? All right, I tend to be more organized that way. I've got this. Annie's a visionary. And so when it came to more of the content creation and the marketing and those kinds of things, that was really energizing for her. And she's like, I've got that. I'd like to wear those hats. And so I feel like that kind of naturally happened for us.
Same thing with sales. Laura is, she's very outgoing, extroverted, can talk to anyone, and really enjoys that part. And I do too. I enjoy talking to people as well, but that just was really naturally suited to her. So I think that's been a fun part of this as sisters is to like really understand, wow, we were raised by 2 people, the same 2 people, and we're very different and wear different hats very naturally, but also we like each other a lot. So, we can tell each other straight as sisters as well if something's going wrong. We've had some really frank conversations with each other, and at the end of the day, we love each other and keep moving. But it's just been kind of a natural process for us, honestly.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And as far as like the content, how much do you need? How do you go about making sure it holds up to like if you go to that conference again? Everyone agrees that it's like good content and additive. Because is it as many school days of the year? You need that much? Do you need 5 times that? How does that work?
Great question. So really the content would be based around specific sounds. So if you look at our game menu, we have the sounds, right? So you select that and then you select the word position. So beginning, middle, or end of words, and then the level. So if you move through the speech hierarchy, you're going to go from words down to the reading level on our site. So within that, right, as they're creating a game, what the content that we're putting out right now would be additional games, right? But the flashcards and the sound part of that is already created, and it changes every time. So we have quite a bit of content right now, and that is continuing to grow.
Yeah. And there's fun content that we can put out as far as the empowering parents piece of adding tips and tricks for each of those sounds and modeling what a successful home practice session looks like and, handouts for the speech world. But yeah, it's all evidence-based. We have access to databases and research, and we're, both received master's degrees from the University of Utah and just have a lot of resources at our fingertips to make sure that we're following evidence-based.
Okay. And does that involve like using the microphone on the phone, like verifying that that was pronounced correctly, or is that the adult listening or the specialist?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
At the point in time that the homework is being sent, we want the speech therapist to establish that sound. And what we mean by that is make sure that the child is saying the sound correctly. We're not necessarily trying to make a parent a speech therapist, right?
Yeah.
Or replace a
Or
speech
replace,
therapist in any way.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we want them to, in home, be practicing a sound that's been established.
Right.
Gotcha.
Just creating a partnership between that parent and the SLP
Okay.
or speech therapist.
And that would like make it a little bit more difficult for the student to sandbag a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Because we've all seen that where it's like they got the times tables correct because you only asked them 3,
Mm-hmm.
or that it's like read that sentence and they read it, but they were sandbagging because they'd already practiced that one because they knew you were going to ask that.
Right.
Okay. Because we've all been on that side where it's like, hey, why don't you do a little more? You're like, I don't want to do a little bit more. So I'm going to con you guys a little bit into that.
Right.
Exactly.
And ultimately, with your guys' background, like it can't just be fluff and like, oh, this works. How do you know? Well, because I made it and it does work.
Right.
Like evidence-based, I think is what you just called it. I'm not familiar with that really. So is there like governing bodies that validate that it does work? Are the parents just saying, yeah, it does work, that's good enough? How do you guys like measure your results?
So we measure results. There's kind of 2 questions embedded that you just gave us. Like, where do we get that evidence base? How do we know? And then how are we validating that the data that we're actually collecting, right?
Yeah.
So the evidence base itself, based on there's, sorry, I'm blanking on the word, but give me just a second. Oh, just like our textbooks that we learned, through our master's degrees, through the clinics that we worked in with supervising clinicians. We worked a lot with kids who had speech sound disorders. And there are different methodologies that you approach speech sound disorders with. So we created our program in a more traditional approach, but it actually serves itself to some of the, I don't want to get into all the details of like the complexity method and the cycles approach, but our material can be used in multiple methods.
But all evidence-based, like Yanni said, right?
Yeah.
These are tried and true methods that speech therapists are using and have been using, and that we were trained in.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
any SLP would look, I keep calling them an SLP, sorry. Any speech therapist would look at that and be like, okay, yeah, this is good material. This is evidence-based. This is a traditional articulation approach. I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
And then the actual data collected, we are purposefully not having the parents who are working with the kids take data. That's a strategic approach from us because we went to school, we got a master's degree for that, where we could listen very carefully to if a sound was correct, incorrect, make sure that we're fine-tuning that sound, and that's a skill set that takes years to develop. We don't want parents to feel the pressure of that. We just want that child to go home, they've established the sound, and then we've given them check marks. So there's on a flashcard that pops up, the word is lion. There's 5 check marks at the bottom of that flashcard, and they say the word lion and hit check, 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 check. So they do it 5 times so that we're giving them a lot of that movement repetition that we talked about that's needed to establish a sound at home.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you guys were like pretty squared away in those respective fields, right? Like you had a good understanding of the problems and the issues. And then there's this whole thing about like turning it into a business. So then you guys were the rookies, kind of, first time entrepreneurs. And you're getting a free master's degree in like all of this.
Our honorary MBAs that we've earned the
Honorary
last couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So you could empathize with somebody, right? Of like, oh, okay, got to actually get some reps in. And I think there are reps in like business creation where it's like, did that wrong,
Yeah.
did it better, did it right.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have gone through a few programs we were talking a little bit before, but Connect Capital, what was that like?
It was incredible. That was an opportunity for us to work. They provided us with a mentoring group professionals from different backgrounds. And we created a pitch deck, and then every week we would pitch to them, and then they would give us feedback. And sometimes that feedback was really brutal.
Yeah.
And there were sometimes we would end a session and feel like just curling up in the fetal position on the floor afterward, right? But there was a lot of growth that happened there, and they really helped us to fine tune our business model and to talk about our business strategy. And they asked us really hard questions that we hadn't thought about before. And so it was a really great experience.
Yeah, absolutely worth it. I mean, it felt like we were being dismantled weekly.
Yeah.
And the mentor whiplash is real. We learned quickly that you get kind of opposite ends of the spectrum advice from people. And it made us really introspective. And what is it that our goal is? What do we want to accomplish? And what's the best way to do that? And we were able to start to kind of discern, like, okay, this mentor is in line with what we're looking for. Let's lean into them. And we'd set up private meetings with them. So the resources that Connect Capital gave us were pretty remarkable.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And you guys probably just organically, without like trying, you could probably track your progress pretty clearly.
Oh, yeah.
But then others like that didn't talk to you for like a month or so, and they kind of had the same conversation. How's the business going? They'd probably see a pretty big difference in like how you guys are thinking through things and articulating. And that was ultimately a couple of month program, give or take.
Yep. And then we did a repeat one. We did one summit with Utah.
Okay. Very cool. And as you guys get to this stage where like there's the product market fit and you've got a really good understanding of your business, the next phase would probably be like scaling the team. And sometimes that does require like raising money, sometimes not. It's kind of your guys' prerogative. But how do you guys aim to build out and grow the team and grow the business over, let's just make it easy, over the next year? Like, what are your milestones?
Yeah, great question. We have done some fundraising. We did a family and friends round. And kind of the idea of that round was to help us bridge, the chasm of the innovators, the early innovators and beta users of our product into those more pragmatic users who need a little bit more established traction and bugs worked out. And that's what our family and friends round is helping us accomplish. So in the next year, we have milestones as far as number of districts that we're selling to, number of private practices, revenue goals, obviously, that go along with that. And just our immediate hire in the foreseeable, next couple of months, Laura and I have been doing all of the cold calling and emails and outreach and all of those things. And it takes time to do that,
Very time consuming.
There's a lot of, we both are wearing that hat right now, and we're developing out through that process very strategically. What are the processes that we're using, and we're building them out together and writing them down and creating like a system that is working. This worked well, this didn't. Here's our message. Here's all of those things. So in the short term, a BDR, someone who can help us just, make those calls, send the
Generate
emails
leads.
out, set up meetings, all of those things, because we're doing that and we're having a lot of success in some of the methods that we've used over the summer to set up. We've got a lot of meetings coming up in September with districts and groups, and that we've already started having. And then as far as scaling from there, as far as the team goes, having someone in more of a sales role with us. That would be our next big hire, bringing someone on full time, and would be, I guess, our first official hire. We've contracted with a lot of different amazing professionals, but that would be the beginning of growing our team.
Gotcha. And do you guys know, like, there's certain entrepreneurs that know, like, this is the account I want, whether I get it in 5 days or 5 years, like this one will be big. Is there like a certain school district or a certain group that you guys set your sights on of, like, if we can get to them and pitch them and ultimately get them, like, we'll have achieved some sort of milestone?
Absolutely. Yes. There's a couple for us. We're from Davis School District. Like we attended the Davis School District. We have a lot of friends and contacts within that district.
And our kids go there.
And our kids are currently going to that district.
There's your SDRs right there.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. So Davis School District would be a big one for us. Granite School District would be a big one.
Alpine.
And Alpine. Yep.
And do you find it's this is a stereotype, and I'll defend it, that it moves a little bit slower in these sales cycles?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We are very, very aware of the slow sales cycle of schools, right? We and the procurement process, and we have taken a deep dive into understanding that. And that's part of also this friends and family round, is kind of helping us bridge this next year as we are establishing relationships and navigating that sales cycle.
So you guys already know what you're in for.
Oh, we do.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We have additional revenue streams, which is private practices, private schools that have a much narrower sales cycle, just to help, navigate that. But it's also, you need to spend the majority, the bulk of your time with those school districts to make those sales. So that really is our focus.
Yeah.
All in there. Yep.
Yeah. It'll be really fun, I would imagine, as you guys like get your beachhead in Utah and move out, to kind of appreciate how different the schools are in America, right? Like what challenges they're facing.
Absolutely.
Right.
And the stories are going to be really fun and cool. Like whether you go east or west, it'll be a fun interaction with these folks, I think.
And we're already seeing that. We just went to the ASHA Schools Connect conference in Long Beach and met with school districts from across the United States and had meetings set up with people in California, people in DC. And you're right, learning about different ways that schools are navigating their issues. I mean, there's been some pretty creative solutions out there, and it's fun for us to get to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And ultimately, like, the school districts, the superintendents, principals, whoever it is, they trust each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if they like what the results are from your guys' product and company, it probably makes the next one a lot easier if they're validating, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Land and expand,
land
right?
and expand model. Yep.
Very cool. And then I guess ultimately for y'all, like with being trained in it and seeing results, it's got to be pretty fulfilling that there are happier faces and happier parents and happier kids
Yeah.
as the end result for all the effort you guys have put into it.
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
To say, tell them about Cade.
Yeah, honestly, that's really what it boils down to for us. When you see that success in someone and you know that that's a result of something that the blood, sweat, and tears, I mean, not to be cliche, but that have gone into it, you see that result and it becomes worth it. There's a family that found us right at the MVP launch of our product in January of 2022. And at the point in time they found us, her name is Jocelyn, and she's given us permission to tell her story. And her son, Cade, he had a severe speech sound disorder. And it led to just a lot of tantrums and difficulty working with him in the home, knowing what it was that he even needed in the first place. So his ability to communicate his basic wants and needs was really delayed. And so she had him tested, and he qualified. He was, again, diagnosed with this severe speech sound disorder and was working with a clinician who meant really well. She was doing her best, but she had 70 kids on her caseload.
Yeah.
Which is the average.
Which is
70
the
kids.
average. And it actually also happened to be right around COVID. So they were getting it through telehealth once a week, which can be a very, great solution, but it wasn't great for Cade. So Jocelyn even though he was in speech therapy, was just floundering. She felt really powerless. She didn't know how to help him. And she stumbled across our site. And so using that MVP version of 2 games at the time, they started practicing 5 minutes a day together. And Cade was engaged. He would play. They had fun doing it together. And within a few short months, she had him retested going into the summer, and he no longer qualified for speech services. He had progressed to the point that the sounds that he was saying The ones he couldn't quite say yet, he wasn't quite age appropriate to start working on them. And he was understandable. He could communicate. And Jocelyn reached out to us and just expressed really heartfelt thank you that this worked. And we want there to be a lot more CADE stories.
Oh, for sure. It ultimately benefits everyone, right?
Yep.
Right. I mean, we all know a child that can't communicate correctly, right? Whether that's your own kid or someone in your neighborhood or a family member. And it's heartbreaking when you have a kid that really struggles. That's why we went into this profession. And so to be able to help on a much larger scale has been really rewarding.
Absolutely. Well, color me impressed, and kudos to both of you for having this vision and then being willing to tackle the entrepreneurship side of this. And my guess is there's going to be a lot of happy folks because of your efforts. So thank you, Annie and Laura. Appreciate your time. Best of luck going forward.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
You bet.
Been a pleasure.
Thanks.